Welcome to Blockchain Recorded, the podcast for the tech curious, where we talk about anything and everything related to the exponentially evolving crypto, blockchain, and Web 3.0 space. Our mission is simple: to share knowledge, facilitate discourse, and help evolve education in blockchain fundamentals, decentralization solutions, and relevant use cases for today's digital economy. We at Blockchain Recorded are not registered investment advisors and do not deal with financial or trading token elements, nor offer any licensed financial services. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only, while the opinions of all parties involved are their own. I'm your host, Nina Tserar, and now let's talk blockchain. Before we begin, this podcast is possible by our sponsor at Ambire. The Ambire wallet is one of the top products in crypto asset management. It is the first open source, non-custodial smart wallet that delivers exceptional user experience combined with solid security. With Ambire Wallet, users can easily navigate the world of Web3. It comes packed with features like built-in swaps, cross-chain bridges, integrated earning opportunities, and more. In addition, Ambire offers things like human-readable transaction parsing, eliminating ERC20 approvals and front-running protection. The smart wallet uses gas abstractions that allow for unique features like paying for gas with stable coins. Users can batch multiple transactions to save time and gas fees. The wallet also supports NFTs and allows you to connect to any dApp via Wallet Connect. You can use it with an email and password or add hardware wallets or hot wallets as signers to upgrade your security. And the best part, Ambire speaks human. The UI is friendly and informative, ensuring you understand what you're doing and eliminating risks for mistakes. Ambire Wallet users are currently eligible for continuous wallet token rewards. To learn more and get your Ambire account today, visit www.ambire.com. That is AMBIRE.com. Before I introduce our guest today, I have a couple of brief updates for our community. Going forward, we invite everyone to join us on Twitter Spaces, where we will pre-stream each episode the day before publishing it on all of our distribution channels. We also have a new NFT program with Blockchain Recorded Community NFTs. These can be claimed from our webpage, blockchainrecorded.com. So visit our website, check it out, and follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube for new updates and potential airdrops. And today's guest is Wes Levitt. Wes is head of strategy for Theta Labs, where he works on corporate strategy, marketing and press relations, and analytics. He has been a speaker on blockchain topics at conferences like the New York Media Festival, Blockchain Connect, and NAB Streaming Summit, among others. Wes also serves as a partner at Alpha Sigma Capital, a blockchain-focused investment fund. Prior to joining Theta Labs, Wes spent 8 years in investment roles in real estate equity and securitized debt. He holds a BS in economics from University of Oregon and an MBA from UC-Berkeley Haas School of Business. Wes, welcome to Blockchain Recorded.
Hey, Nina. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. I'll just start off with the usual question. How did you get into the crypto space? And I'm particularly curious about your journey to Web3 from your investment/financier roles.
Yeah, sure. That's pretty classic story, I think. I was one of the early Redditors that dabbled in Bitcoin a little bit in the early days, although I wasn't as diehard as some other folks, unfortunately, because I was more the type that bought some Ethereum at 10 and stole it at 20 and thought I was a genius. So no great early crypto fortune online, but I was working in real estate finance and at a real estate private equity firm in San Francisco, and I started going to business school at Berkeley with the idea of just staying in the finance and business realm. But when I was there, I happened to take a few classes in the computer science department that were sort of like integrated classes with the business school and the law school all together, focused on cryptocurrency and blockchain tech. And I was blown away by how much of the focus of the whole CS department was turning to blockchain. And, it was standing room only to get into these classes. Even if you didn't register, people were piling in to try to get into them. This is like 2016.
Oh, really?
So that's kind of what the light bulb went off, that this thing I've been interested in for years, but never really took it that seriously as just, our magic internet money on Reddit. All of a sudden realized that this is getting support from all types of sectors, and all types of smart folks I knew from different studies and practices were diving headfirst into this. So that really clicked for me that this is something that actually is going to become viable and is going to get a lot more attention and funding around the world. So around then, 2016 is when I decided to start looking into taking full-time steps into the space. Just by luck, one of my classmates happened to be interning at a VC fund that invested in Theta Labs in 2017. And so I got to know the team through that and joined full time in late 2017 and never looked back.
Wow. Just curious, the 2016 lines to get into the classes, did you get a sense, looking back on it, was this more of a hype sort of move, how to learn how to get rich quick, or was it true blockchain, fundamental, I want to build something type of sentiment?
Yeah, I think it depends on who you ask, because when it really started getting crazy was around March of 2017 when Ethereum went to 300 or something like that for the first time. And I say it depends on who you ask because a lot of the folks were genuinely interested just because it was emerging tech, so it was exciting for them to move into this space. Now, there's always a little bit within that of, part of getting in emerging tech is there's the opportunity for great fortune. So I wouldn't say anyone was doing it for strictly financial reasons, but I don't think it was lost on anyone that if this is going to change the world and you were on the ground floor, there is a lot of opportunity for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When did you join Theta Labs?
So I started consulting for him in fall of 2017, and then this is when Theta itself was in sort of stealth mode, the blockchain itself. And then I joined full-time right as we went live with it, which is, I think, February 2018, actually.
Okay, so it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually just, preparing for this podcast, I listened to one of the AMAs back in December. So your panel, it seems very experienced, and it sounded like you've been on board for a while. But yeah, this brings me, obviously, let's talk about Theta and try to paint the macro picture to understand a little bit more what we're talking about. So Theta Network is a layer 1 blockchain platform focused on video, media, and entertainment. That's what your website says.
Yeah, correct.
It would be great just to focus first on the background of Theta. So, which I understand also listening to the AMA and doing some background research, it's an extended ecosystem with obviously a Theta Network, and then you have Theta Video and ThetaDrop with NFTs and so forth. But as I understand, its core solution is to decentralize content delivery, or more specifically, you're solving the peer-to-peer video content delivery.
Yeah.
I mean, feel free, you can dissect that. But it would be great if you could just first take us through maybe the traditional content delivery network technology industry, just so we can understand the concept, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sure. Our origin story does a good job of kind of explaining how we got here. And yes, it's ecosystems expanded to a lot of things that touch different pieces of media and entertainment now. But at the base of it, the reason why we had the idea to launch Theta blockchain in the first place is because Theta actually comes out of a company and video platform called Sliver TV. That's still the parent company of Theta Labs, wholly owned. And what Sliver TV was is a esports focused video platform. It originally solely in VR, but then moving into your typical linear content like you'd see on Twitch. And like a lot of early startup video platforms, even though the company was having a good deal of success, had several million MAUs, was doing live VR streams for ESL and DreamHack and these big esports tournaments around the world. What they realized pretty quickly is that when you're not buying CDN bandwidth on the scale of a YouTube or a Twitch, it's extremely expensive on a per byte basis. So it's very difficult to actually get to that point of scale because it's just far too expensive unless you're reaching the hundreds of millions of MAUs. So, and just the high level, since you asked about the traditional CDN. So it's companies like Akamai or later it's been to a great extent taken over by cloud services like AWS or Google CDN or Azure, where they actually do the heavy lifting of moving a video in a data center somewhere that you want to watch to your device. So if this is stored in Boston, a video you want to watch on YouTube is stored in Boston, how does it actually get from that data center to the phone you're on in Los Angeles or the computer you're on in Tokyo or so forth? So these companies basically provide the service to transmit that data across various connections to get to your device. It's pretty cheap if you're doing it at global scale for billions of users, especially if you have your own captive CDN like a Google CDN does to power YouTube. But to a small platform, it is quite expensive, and at one point was actually 50% of the company's burn rate, which is pretty wild for a startup where you expect salaries and maybe some R&D costs are going to be really your only expense drivers, but it was all going to cloud services, or more than half. And so we started putting our heads around, okay, this is great, but this is not scalable until we are much further down the line. So how can we find a way to defray these costs somehow? And it just so happened around that time, W1, who was at DHVC at the time, was leading the Series A in Sliver TV, and she was a big early proponent of blockchain tech. And she said, well, you've got these pockets of users around the world, like hardcore fans of this Brazilian esports team that are turning in by the thousands to watch. Why not take advantage of them with a peer-to-peer network where they can relay the video amongst themselves with just the extra bandwidth they have available? And that's been tried a few times. You see the proto version of that in BitTorrent. But the key difference that we thought of with her was if you issue a token as part of this protocol where if you share this video with your neighbor nearby and take some of that burden off the video platform, you can actually earn these tokens as a reward for doing so. So think of it as like a more firmly incentivized version of BitTorrent where you have a reason to stay on and share videos rather than just the ability to stay on in BitTorrent. Like, you have to keep your ratio where you're seeding enough to justify what you're downloading. This incentivizes the users to go beyond that and actually stay online and continue to relay that video to everyone else in the area. And of course, to us as a video platform, the key was that greatly reduces the amount that we have to pay to AWS because the users are doing this work for it. In some case, 70, 80% less bandwidth usage on our end because you share it 5 times to users within a given region, and then they share that video with 10 other users per person. So it quickly, just like a peer-to-peer is more efficient in file sharing beforehand, when you've seen like the music sharing examples, it works that way for live video too, with a few tweaks, as it turns out.
Very interesting. So you alluded to content delivery previously, just giving an example within the US, and obviously you're talking peer-to-peer. What are the factors? This is a complete layperson question of what goes sort of behind the scenes. If in terms of content delivery, I don't know. You're talking a lot of about sort of US companies. What about Europe? What about, you mentioned Brazil? What are the factors? Is there any regulation factors that are involved here in terms of the content delivery, or that does not even matter?
Yeah, so it as far as what content you're allowed to distribute between?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it all depends on what the content is. So, for example, like if we, in the original form in Sliver TV, which in case anyone's watching was confused, it has since been renamed Theta TV.
Right.
If it's users streaming on the platform, when you sign up for a Theta TV or a Twitch or any of these, you are allowing that content to be streamed anywhere that platform serves. So you basically, you are giving the rights for that stream to be used by any user around the world. If it's something like a movie from MGM or Lionsgate, like we've streamed before with licensing deals onto Theta TV, that's much more strictly governed by the agreement that you license that content. So that it's not a government regulation, but the content owner, when they give you the rights to that contractually, like oftentimes it would be, we have the rights to show this to users in US and Canada, and then we have to geo-block anyone that's trying to watch from an IP address outside of the places we have rights to. Yeah,
I'm just thinking of like a basic use case YouTube scenario, like being able to see a YouTube video, I don't know, in Europe, but not being able to see it in the US.
Yeah, I think generally the EULA for when you sign up for YouTube says you give the rights for anyone to, although I'm not totally certain on that. But I think that's basically like you more or less agree when you use the platform that we're going to show this to whoever we want.
Right. So who all is part of your user base now?
Yeah, so it's Actually, it's evolved a lot because quickly after we implemented the underlying blockchain in this peer-to-peer video sharing protocol on Theta TV, and it worked and reduced our costs, we realized this is probably a lot bigger idea and a lot bigger opportunity for what we built here, the infrastructure, than it is to actually try to make Theta TV the biggest platform in the world. Because around that time, 2018, 2019, is when you also saw a huge number of new video platform entrants come in with enormous amounts of money. Like your Caffeine TV raises 200 million. There was others in Southeast Asia that were raising even more, basically trying to fight off Twitch or YouTube and take it over. And what almost virtually all of them failed. And the reason is just there's a huge network effect to having a platform where everyone already is. So you try to launch a new one, but it's kind of like the cold start problem, or like a chicken and the egg kind of problem, where you don't have users, so the content isn't there.
Right.
So because the content's there, no users want to come to the platform, and so on. And once you are the incumbent and you already have that natural advantage, it's very difficult to go after. So we realized along the way that unless we wanted to go out and raise several $100 million, if that was even possible for us to do so, and go head to head, it's really a losing proposition to try to take on the largest incumbents just by trying to outspend them and win over their users by trying to pay their top content creators to switch sides over to your platforms. A lot have tried that, and basically all have failed. So that's what kind of clicked for us, that while Theta TV, we continue to build as a niche platform and as a showcase for the technology. The reality is it shifted from our customers or our primary users being the end user, and to more of a B2B type situation where we've built this protocol that helps video platforms deliver video more efficiently and introduce token incentives, which can drive user growth and user view times and such. And now really the users of the protocol to some extent is changed to other platforms that we're trying to introduce this technology to.
Yeah, I was pretty blown away when I saw like a NASA rocket stream on using, I guess, Theta TV.
Yeah.
It's so cool. That was...
Yeah, that's right. They've been one of our... We've done a bunch of different live events at their rocket launches, which has always been really popular.
Yeah, that's just amazing. So in terms of okay, your user base. So a content creator can use the Theta framework to set up its own CDN, essentially.
Yeah, in a sense. So as we expanded the protocol, we also launched a standalone piece of software called the Edge Node, which it's almost like instead of you all going to Theta TV and you can relay the Theta TV stream with each other. As we expanded the idea to be multiple platforms and different enterprises that could use this, rather than you having to be a user who happens to want to watch that specific platform, you could just run a piece of software that will look around for where jobs need to be done. So the idea is that this is sort of like an agnostic piece of software where it just feeds requests and for we want this video shared, or as we're expanding, we want this file stored, or we've got this video that needs to be transcoded to a different bit rate. And it's just a network of nodes that you can feed jobs into, and then the work comes back completed to you. So that's about 10 to 15,000 on a given day, usually about edge nodes that are running out by users around the world that are doing this work.
Yeah, this is great. So it would be great to maybe dive into more of the technicals. You just said in terms of the edge node. So by running, and you alluded to this before, by running an edge node, the user shares his or her resources such as storage, bandwidth, and etc. So maybe help us grasp the concept here. Because this also goes into basically Theta's protocol and UI-based solutions, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it started out specifically that this piece of software allows you to relay video to other users when it's requested, but then it started to become that we have this community that's going out of their way that's saying, I have a lot of excess bandwidth. I want to run this node and I want to do even more. I've got a bunch of storage available, or I have access to this cloud instance where I have cheap storage, or I have processing power. How can I contribute these as well? And then it's actually, once the rails are in place, like the underlying token payments for doing work, it's actually not nearly as complicated to just expand what these different nodes can do. So rather than just tap into their bandwidth so they can relay video, we started to expand to, so you have excess storage. Well, you can store these files in exchange for token payments, like you've seen in other decentralized storage protocols, like your Filecoins of the world, or to do CPU tasks, like originally, because of our background in video, it was to do encoding and transcoding of videos, but we just announced 2 different AI startups in the last month that they want to use this distributed edge network to train language models and do various processing work for their AI. One's in the healthcare space, and the other is called Levita, and the other is called FedML for federated machine learning, where they have certain tasks that they think can be done more securely if it's on a distributed network rather than all in one centralized entity like a data center. And so what I'm getting at is we started with video sharing, but once you have the bones of this network in place and a bunch of users around the world with their devices connected, ready to do work, then you can kind of abstract that away and realize this is a powerful network that you can basically point it to do anything. You know, if you have a certain amount of processing power on this network, you can just say, well, now this enterprise would like you to do this AI model training, and then it just goes to it.
The Blockchain Recorded podcast is a media partner with the Stronger Together Challenge Initiative. Our collaborative role extends to hosting topic-specific panels to facilitate discussion and perspectives within varying industries related to the Web3 space. Let us have a few words with Laurent Perello, the initiative founder. Laurent, what is the Stronger Together Challenge Initiative?
First, we have to mention that it's an ecosystem initiative. In other words, a voluntary movement encompassing leading partners and projects of the Tron and BitTorrent chain ecosystem.
What are the main goals of this initiative?
The main goal is to demonstrate the powerful together effect. As I used to say, together is much more than a word. It's magic. We aim to show to the whole crypto industry and beyond that the Web3 revolution is not about competition, but rather about cooperation. You know, we are really supportive, welcoming, open-minded and inclusive. It's not a marketing speech. This initiative is also a way to confirm our long-term commitment, regardless of the bear or bull market situation, and our determination to keep on building every day, guided by a long-term vision and a humanistic philosophy.
Thanks, Laurent, for illustrating what Stronger Together stands for. Season 1 of the initiative successfully ended, while Season 2 is planned to start in December. Let me also mention that panels will be celebrated by NFT airdrops. Stay tuned for further updates. I want to take a few steps back and talk about first, so Theta's blockchain. When was it first released? Was it 2019?
Yeah, testnet the year before, but then March of 2019 is when the Theta mainnet launched.
And was it built on a Tendermint stack?
Not exactly. It's heavily, say, influenced by Tendermint, but what actually happened is we started building off a Tendermint fork, and then part of the way through, for various reasons, our dev team decided to basically rebuild from scratch and go. But design-wise, it's still heavily influenced by Tendermint. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the same DPoS principles are in place and how it works.
Mm-hmm. Just reading about it and researching about it, I may be a little challenging here, but as I understand it, had an option to be validated only by 30 validators. Mm-hmm. Why was that? I mean, wouldn't you say like 30 is not, it's kind of a low number to enable any kind of more decentralization?
Yep.
I mean, this may be a common critique that you get a lot.
Yeah, it is. And it's sort of it's a journey rather than destination. It started off with just 7, and then it's expanded over time as we've added some enterprises like Google Cloud and Sony Europe are running them. A bunch of our community users are running validators as well. It's permissionless, so anyone can join. And 30 is an arbitrary cap, but in order to, or at least our current thinking from our dev team's theoretical calculations that it can be up to 100 without starting to introduce latency issues. And so that'll keep expanding over time. It'll just be the cap will be lifted and continue up until there starts to be any kind of latency issues with block propagation, which, as said, is expected to be around 100. Now, even 100 isn't particularly decentralized. One thing that we introduced a few years back is sort of a second step in that process where anyone with a much lower barrier to entry can run a second former node called a guardian node. And the way it works simply is the validator nodes propose new blocks, and then at checkpoints of every 100 blocks, these 3,000 or so guardian nodes finalize them. And so it's the idea is to try to mitigate somewhat the scalability trilemma here, where you can still have a fast confirmation from a smaller set of validator nodes, but if they were to be compromised or they all collude with each other, then this larger decentralized set on a somewhat wider time frame can refuse to finalize those blocks and roll it back. So it's kind of like a checks and balances here.
Okay. Can you talk about the difference between the original L1 and the Metachain?
Yeah. So it's not technically a new chain that launched. It's more like a fork that upgraded it, because what it did is introduce the possibility to launch subchains that then roll up to the original L1. And so it could be a little confusing, but the Metachain is more just a term to denote the whole set of the main chain and all the subchains underneath it. But the main chain of this Metachain system is the same L1 that's been running since 2019. There is no token swap or any change to users. It was just the same address and chain that you've seen the whole time.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of clarify. I mean, I know that the L1 is scaled with subchains. Just sort of wanted to get to what the use case was. I mean, are we talking about others building their own applications using Theta subchains? Yeah. Also?
Yeah, exactly. The plan with some of the announced launch partners that are in the process of building those right now is that this just two big things we focused on for launching this in response to feedback is scalability and flexibility, or customizability, maybe you'd say. So one, like you said, is scalability, because you can have app-specific chains that anyone can launch, and then you're not fighting over throughput. And in some cases, like there's a game, Fuse Wars, that is building their first subchain, but has said in the future they may spin up any number of them if they need to as their needs increase. So it's a scalability thing for one. The second is that each subchain has some more flexibility in how you can set parameters for it. So like with we talked about that, how the validator set works on the main chain. For your given subchain, you can issue your own governance token for that subchain and have your own validator set. You can decide whether it's completely permissionless. You can decide if you want your validators to be on a permissioned basis where it's only run by certain people. So it's more like, there's various ways you can configure an L1, and it may serve better some people or some enterprises and not so well others. What this is trying to do is saying you can have a subchain that will function just like any L1, is EVM compatible, so everything rolls up the same regardless of whether it's on the subchain, main chain, etc.
Right, that was one of my questions. Yeah,
and you can set some of these parameters, how gas is paid, how the validator set works yourself. Customize it however you think works best for your project or your business or whatever it is you're building for. And then that can all roll up to the Theta main chain. So it shares in the security of each of these, because that's a big issue as well, is everyone can start up a fork of, if you like Theta but you want to have your own fork of it, you can do that, but there's no security if the total valuation of the governance token is like $50,000. Anyone can take it over, but if it rolls up to the security of the Theta main chain, it's still going to cost you hundreds of millions, if not more, to actually pose a threat to the security of the chain.
Okay, I may backtrack a little bit here. Who can, in terms of the validation incentive model, who can validate the Metachain? And well, actually, what is the validation incentive model?
Yeah, so there's two main tokens in the, we say native tokens in the Theta ecosystem. Anyone can create their own, and similar to any other L1 that you're familiar with. But the two ones that are native to the blockchain itself are Theta, which is the staking token, which every validator or guardian stakes.
Proof of stake, yeah.
Yeah, and then ThetaFuel, which is the gas token of the protocol. Similar functions as most people are familiar with, but it's split into two, as opposed to both being in one as, say, ETH, where you will stake it and use it to pay for gas. To run a validator node, anyone can do it with 200,000 Theta. You just have to stake that amount of Theta, and then the incentive is that you earn pro rata the new ThetaFuel gas token that's created with each block. So it's less complex than it sounds. It's really the same as most proof of stake protocols, where you earn a percentage of the new issuance.
Sure.
It's just split into the form of two tokens as opposed to all of that being wrapped within the one.
Right, the Theta, and then the one that's solely used for gas.
Yes, that's right.
Will there be any additional tokens associated with Metachain, or is that sort of where you're at?
Yeah, there's no new token that needs to be associated with, and to be clear, at the native level. But anyone who, many of these are virtually all, they're running a subchain, they're issuing a new token of their own, the TNT20 token, similar to an ERC20 standard, to govern their subchain. But we distinguish between the ones that are actually hard coded into the protocol, the staking and the gas token, and the ones where they're just launched via smart contract. So like if you run, blockchain recorded wants to spit up their own subchain, you issue your own, the BRP token that governs that subchain, that is still going to be issued via smart contract, in the same way that, like if you think in terms of Ethereum, ETH is not issued via smart contract. It's just native to the blockchain existing. Whereas, say, Chainlink, there's a Chainlink smart contract that created the Link token. That distinction is that there will only ever be Theta and ThetaFuel as native tokens to the protocol. But yeah, there's already dozens, and I'm sure hundreds in the works that'll be issued via smart contract, just like you've seen proliferate in other L1s.
Yeah, thanks. I think I probably picked your brain in terms of the technicals.
Oh, good.
But it helps to understand. I mean, we have an array of listeners, and anywhere from the newbies, normies, to people who want to understand a little bit more. So it's definitely helpful to dive deeper. So you did mention, okay, it's EVM interoperable, and I'm assuming you're inviting other dApps. Yeah,
that's right. Part of it is inviting others to build on Theta, but even besides that, we're not looking to raise a war chest and pay every dApp out there to flip, as you saw in sort of these DeFi wars with some of the L1s the last year or so. It's more also just about being compatible across chains, because there's dApps that are going to touch different chains and different user bases, and it's just simpler for them to be able to look at Theta as another integration as opposed to us versus them. And I think that's going to be a key theme in general moving forward in the next years, because it's, I think the narrative in some people's minds the last few years is you have ETH and there's ETH killers. And one of them will take the place as the one chain to rule them all. But it's becoming clear that that's just not going to happen.
No,
or if it,
right.
I mean, never say never, but if it was going to, it probably would have already. And now you see even more that different L1s with different specifications or different focuses to serve different communities are coming up and gaining traction. So we think it's probably going to be a situation where these will all coexist, and it make a lot more sense if we can all communicate with each other rather than be these walled gardens fighting over
exactly,
trying to steal this app to come over to ours, when really it can live on both. Like Tether and USDC, I think that really drove home the point to a lot of folks that if you have a token or a dApp, it's going to coexist across many different chains. It's not just going to live on one, and if it ever moves, it's a big transfer over. It's going to live across both, and if the majority of these chains are EVM compatible, that does simplify a lot of that communication.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely healthier to think about it that way. It shouldn't be so cutthroat. That's sort of goes with the ethos also of Web3. we want to be coexist and collaborate and be happy and support each other,
right,
not kill each other. So, and obviously push to educate and to motivate. So, all right. So I think we covered the technicals. Listening to one of your AMAs, I was. It's always been sort of on my bucket list to understand how the video streaming and how these business models work, how YouTube works in the background, and what it all means in terms of the blockchain tech. Now, it was really interesting for me to hear, as a user, what's going on in terms of Netflix and some of the competitors and where you guys are in with your Theta Network. Can you talk maybe a little bit more about that as well? One of the interesting things that was mentioned was how, users now that were burned out by just having too many subscriptions, now we're getting again into the subscription model conversation. We're taking a little bit of a twist here, but you're covering so many different subsets within your ecosystem. So just anything you can share, that would be great.
Yeah. I'm sure as you alluded to, you probably read about the larger streaming wars going on, or even just as a user, you've seen this, like now you've got 8 or 9 that you got to subscribe to, and then you have to play the game of, you sign up for Disney Plus to watch Mandalorian, then you cancel it, but then you want to watch Last of Us, so you got to go sign up on this one, and
you want to watch certain things for certain ones.
Yeah,
and I would argue, just sorry to interject, but I'm also based in Europe, so what we're talking about is, at least I find it's very more of a US centric conversation in terms of, Disney and all these players. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Europeans don't watch as much TV, but yeah, you hear it, you read it, and sure.
Yeah. And it's gotten absurd enough that there's people talking about, well, maybe if there's someone that can offer a service bundling several of these together, and that's just cable. That's what we were trying to get away from the last 20 years. So it's clear it doesn't seem to be going in a direction that customers actually like. And so one of the things that we think is really excited about introducing token models to that is, one, it gives platforms a chance to offer a model that is more in line with pay-as-you-go or watch what you want, and only, with these protocols, you can tell what's being watched, it's not, so you don't have to pay for something you're not watching. But that's just the one that we're seeing kind of emerge in some platforms that we're working with. The more interesting thing to me is, even beyond that, once you start allowing users the flexibility, or companies the flexibility to experiment with these token business models, we have no idea what they're going to come up with. And it's open source and iterative, just like the blockchain world. So if you see a platform that creates a new model via, let's say, a loyalty token, where this earns you the right to watch a certain user's content or a certain company's content, or maybe it gets you a certain amount of hours per month or something like that, and with a single NFT that gives you the right programmable rights to what you can or can't watch. There's probably interesting new models that they're going to come up with as they start iterating that we haven't even considered yet. So giving them that flexibility and encouraging this experimentation, just like you see experimentation like in DeFi, where it just builds and builds and builds upon itself way more than people probably had ever even envisioned when it was just MakerDAO starting out. I think that's what's going to create a really exciting change in how these companies are delivering value to it. And I like to use an example of one called Replay. That's a startup that we led the seed round for. And they've since launched a video platform called Rewarded TV. And they are actually kind of combining this crypto iterative model, but with token incentives, but with traditional content, because they come from a traditional video background and they've struck licensing deals with a lot of great Hollywood studios. But then they're using the token rewards with this token they launched on Theta blockchain to incentivize users, and now starting to implement where you can use this token to pay for content you want. You don't pay for content you aren't watching. And so I think they're my favorite to watch now. It's basically like, this is the the great experiment they're doing. And I'm sure, every time I check in with them, they've come up with a new way that they're going to let users experience content via these new token incentives. And so I think it's just going to be a really exciting time of experimentation among these businesses to try different things and see what's more satisfactory for users beyond the subscription model. And they can do it a lot faster because these startups can very quickly spin up a different idea that then, say, the lead time for a Netflix or a Disney to change their model. It took Netflix 10 years to decide to do an ad tier.
Right.
Again, like it's just the pace is a totally different world.
Well, I mean, just watching Netflix, I feel like it's stagnating just by its sort of user interface anyway. But what you just said, yeah, token economy, the genie's outside the box, right? So the token economies looks like it's the way to go. I think in terms of being consumer or just user focused, is that making it easy for people so it's not so confusing and so complicated. And I think a lot of people just feel like this is just too much. There's so many. I don't know which ones to choose.
Of tokens.
Just in general, as a user, just trying to, like you said, in terms of having subscriptions. Just I'm going back and just basic.
Oh yeah.
It's just it can be overwhelming. But yeah, making it easy, user friendly for the grandmas out there.
Yeah, that's why I thought you meant in the first place is making it easy on the crypto side, which is 100% true. I'm not an ideologue in crypto in the sense that I don't think that the way you onboard each user is by first teaching them about a wallet address and private keys. Otherwise, none of them are going to be using these platforms. Right. The vast majority of people, it's not even just that they're ignorant of this stuff. They don't want to know about it. They don't care. We're never going to have that killer app that uses blockchain under the hood if we're, demanding that they first take a blockchain course and understand it. Just like you and I don't need to understand the bare basics of how like TCP/IP works in order to use the internet, and I don't think all of us should have had to learn that just to get on a Zoom call. Same principle.
Well, there's some who want to know, but that's not a lot of people.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be a requirement. Like that, obviously, the world is better if more people understand how it works, but we can't expect everyone to dig in that deep, and so. Yeah, it's like with Replay and some of these, like we always encourage them to, treat it like an onion. Like the first users, the frontline users, they shouldn't have to know anything more about crypto if they don't want to. Mm-hmm. You allow them to peel back layers if they want to understand deeper about how it works, or maybe for more advanced users, then they have access to their own wallet and then they can withdraw tokens. But you don't hit them with all that in the first 10 seconds of introing your video platform, because at the end of the day, a video platform, if someone shows up on your website, it's because they want to watch video, not because they want to learn about crypto. Now, if they're excited about all these benefits they're earning, and now how this token can be used in other ways, or this other platform also says if you have RPlay tokens, you can now get this content over here. Great. Yes. Now here's a page that teaches you all about this that you click through to it, but starting from the wrong place, the first thing that they have to do is connect their MetaMask wallet just to watch the first video. That's crazy.
Well, that's a big barrier of trust, and that's a big barrier to break, right? Just to hook someone to actually go there.
Yeah.
So we've covered Metachain, we've covered Theta Network, talked about Theta. Well, there's also Theta Video. Is that different from Theta TV?
So we have our Theta Video API.
Oh yeah, that's API. That's for devs.
Yeah. So it's really any user can use it to submit videos and then get back a link where they can embed that on a website or in an app.
Oh, I see.
But it is somewhat more developer focused because like Replay is using Theta Video API for significantly the majority of their virtually all the video on rewarded TV. So you can use it to construct a whole platform, or you could do it one-off. If you just wanted to embed something on the BRP website, you could do that with it. So some users are using it for individual purposes or just to experiment, but I think going forward, a lot of the main usage of that will be in a more experienced developer who they're creating actually a platform with that underlying it.
Okay. And in terms of Theta TV, can you talk a little bit more about the business model behind it? I mean, so you said anyone can publish video content. Are there now? I'm just thinking of basic questions. Are there any costs associated with it?
Yeah, there's no cost associated, but we keep it as basically to for the existing community that uses it regularly and has been for years, and like I said, as a sort of a playground or testing grounds for new features that are rolling out. So there is some ad-supported revenue that we get from that, but really it's not much of a cost center or a revenue driver for it. It's more just this is beneficial to the ecosystem for us to be able to have this to show off how new features are working to roll them out. But like I said, we don't have any plans to drive a huge amount of marketing dollars to it. And so in its present state, it doesn't cost a whole lot to maintain it.
Okay.
We're more focused on giving our partners and platforms like Reward TV to give them the tools for success than to make Theta TV take off.
I see. And then we have our last musketeer, which is ThetaDrop. So that's an NFT marketplace.
Yeah, that's right. And
this is where all the big names come in.
Yeah, exactly. We're having a lot of these conversations with on the infrastructure side, and where frequently that conversation would be like, "That's really interesting. That's also a huge undertaking for us to totally change our stack here." But also, remember this conversations were often happening in the last 18 months or 18 to 24 months. So your American Idols and Katy Perry and other clients of CAA, because CAA was one of our seed investors, saying that's all great. We also want to launch NFTs. So can you guys have this blockchain? Is that capable of that? And we said, well, of course it is. It's EVM compatible. But they're not going to launch the smart contracts themselves. So we started to realize, okay, we're getting a huge amount of inbound interest from people that want to launch these NFTs with us. So it makes sense to build a platform to support that as well. And then a lot of our community rushed in and started releasing their own NFT projects, which was really cool to see those come up organically. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's not core exactly to what we're building with decentralized video and compute and such and supporting these platforms. But it does make a lot of sense because so many of the same enterprises also are looking at NFTs as a big part of their strategy. So it made sense for us to fill the gap. And we also look at it as a good way to build what we now think of as more like a suite of decentralized products that media and entertainment can use. There's the infrastructure side. There's a consumer side with the token economies. There's NFTs for those launching the collection. So anything in the blockchain space that a media or entertainment company might want to touch on, we're trying to provide a platform. And sometimes that works all together too. Like again, in the case of like a replay, they use both seamlessly, where they're issuing NFTs that fit into their video platform. And so we think that's a model where while the generative PFP collections don't necessarily fit inside of it, a lot of these companies are looking at NFTs less as just like a profile pic to collect and show off on Twitter, and more as something that has more utility and is actually part of their whole consumer reaching strategy. So to that extent, we think encouraging those use cases and showing how NFTs can be useful, it totally fits right in with what we're trying to do.
Well, great. I think you've covered your ecosystem pretty clearly. What can we expect, or in terms of your roadmap? Given we're February, so like what's in store for the next year? Yeah,
the biggest focuses we have are continuing to build out this edge network and giving it more ability to basically have different use cases. So, like I said, storage is one that we're expanding this year, so that video files can be stored across this decentralized network, or even the NFTs themselves can be stored, not just have the token exist on the blockchain, but the actual picture or the video that underlies it also to be stored on this decentralized network. You probably have heard the case where like the 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 storage bucket goes down and you've got an NFT that's immutable, but it points to a dead link. So what do you actually have anymore? So moving even the thing it points to, whether it's a picture, video, whatever it is, on not on chain, but on this decentralized network as well. So it's truly immutable too. That's going to be a storage focus on the storage element. And then with our Metachain rollout, we're helping a lot of different firms and community projects that are building out their own subchains. And so on the dev side, we're working with their teams to get those spun up and get those off the ground and help them launch their own ecosystems on these subchains.
How many devs do you have?
On our team internally, it is 12 or 13, I believe, right around there.
Okay.
So we're still quite small. That's why we have a focus on collaborating with other projects that are building in the space, because we're definitely not taking the approach of we're going to build it all ourselves. We try to build the core chain and the tools needed for others to build around us. That we see that as a way to use other talented developers as like a force multiplier, because obviously 12 people by themselves can only build so much, but we think that fits with the ethos of the space as well. We're not a big closed source company that's going to do it all ourselves. We're going to be working together with a lot of folks.
Well, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
I wanted just to, so your dev team is about 12, 13, and you're based in Europe. What's the decision behind that? Are you, is there a big Theta community where you are, or?
Yeah, it's a bit personal and for Theta. So I was based in the Bay Area like most of our team, but
right
in the we were obviously working from home for years, really. In that
some
time,
of us still are.
Yeah, exactly, and and some of our team is still distributed out as well. And so at the time, my wife got an offer from Microsoft, but the last minute they decided she. Instead of San Francisco, they wanted her based somewhere in Europe, since she's from Europe originally and speaks 4 languages. So they said, you'd be more useful over here, which would have been a tough call in other circumstances, but our team had already been moving to working distributed in the first place. And we'd been talking for years about how the Theta community over in Europe and some of the companies that we've been talking to say we never come over here.
Yep.
And so it actually worked out nicely, because it was no problem at all from a corporate standpoint, since we wanted to be more distributed in the first place. And then it's given me an opportunity to spend more time out here with the Theta folks out here. So like we're talks of organizing more Theta meetups up here. I've been able to spend more time at the conference circuit out here and spread the word. So it's been a good move overall.
Well, kudos to that, because most of, in terms of guests and talks, and it's mostly US centric. So it's really good to also hear that there's also distribution overseas. I mean, obviously it's not just Europe and US, and there's Asia and other ones, but still it's good to have people all around. I mean, you are global, so it's a good move. Yeah,
absolutely. We made a few hires in Seoul recently, and some of the teams that we're working with are these new these AI projects are Singapore based. So it doesn't make sense for us all to be so tightly held that we all have to be in Silicon Valley. I mean, It doesn't hurt. There's a great ecosystem there, and there's reasons why people went there in the first place, but it's a distributed space. Like, we have to be able to have focus in other places as well.
Well, and there's a lot of talent elsewhere too. I think that's maybe sometimes overlooked, and maybe there's like a language barrier or whatever. And but yeah, you're right. It is a distributed space, and that's definitely the good way to go. Well, Wes, is there anything to add that I haven't asked, or is there anything else that you'd like for our audience to know or to take away?
Yeah, I would just say that as much as we spent talking about what we at Theta Labs have built, it's what's really driving our ecosystem forward, and it's becoming more and more true now, is community projects that are coming up, both in, ones that are launching their own tokens, because that gets a lot of attention, but even just like there's community development shops, like one called Fuel Foundry. It's just a few developers that know the Theta stack back and forth that are now helping other projects launch in our ecosystem. So the point I want to make is if you're interested in learning more or getting involved, there's a lot to be done and a lot you can jump in on. There's a lot of friendly folks in our community that would appreciate more help, whether you're technical or non-technical. So I don't want to give the impression that it's that's an exciting company building things. Like really, we're only doing one piece, and over time a smaller and smaller piece. It's really your listeners that want to jump in and help a project that are going to make a difference.
Sure. I think one of the key words that you said was community too. So it's very important. What's the best way to follow your work or give you a shout, contact, or participate with Theta?
Yeah. So with it, if you want to just see the latest news or follow what's going on, get updates, our Twitter is Theta_network. Or you can go to ThetaToken.org to see all our links, for example, to start off on our GitHub or join one of our community channels.
Awesome. Well, Wes, thank you so much on this deeper Theta dive. Like I said, it's been on my bucket list to dissect and understand actually Theta's connection to the media world, and let alone understand how the business and protocols behind content delivery work and live streaming networks, etc. Like I said, I imagine your audience is increasingly global, so which calls for podcast discussions like this. So thanks so much for being with us, and all the best for the year ahead.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nina. Great talking to you today.
Thanks, Wes. Thanks again to our guests, and thank you everyone for listening. Thanks also to the Bariam Music team for providing their music. You can check them out on bariammusic.com. All of the supporting information is on our website, blockchainrecorder.com. You can listen to us on Google, Apple, and Amazon podcasts, as well as on YouTube, Spotify, Radio Public, and Stitcher. You can follow us on Twitter and YouTube, where we are super grateful for your support. Stay tuned for our next episode.